Hey everyone, welcome. My name is Armando Sotero, and I'm with the Bureau of Justice Assistance SAFLEO program. Welcome to today's webcast. We have an amazing panel for you today. And so just a little bit about me. I retired back in 2016 after a 26-year career in law enforcement, and I'm extremely passionate and supportive of everything and anything that has to do with promoting officer safety and wellness. Now, welcome to our live today. Now, behind the scenes, we have Mr. David Perry, who is going to be our chat moderator. He is one of our lead instructors with the SAFLEO program. And so we're going to encourage you to use the chat to ask questions. He also will be sharing some very important resources with you during this webcast. And so kind of get the chat warmed up, if you will. If you're watching us now live, go ahead and tell us your first name and maybe tell us what agency you're with or something about you so we can begin to communicate with you inside of the chat feature. Now, the webcast today is 100% focused on that important role of a supervisor and their roles in promoting that mental health piece with our officers. And again, like I mentioned before, we have two amazing panelists with us, because at the end of the day, this profession, as great as it is through time, it has the possibility of taking a toll on the officer's mental health. And so we want to make sure that we as supervisors or aspiring supervisors understand that we have such a critical role in not only understanding who our officers are beyond the badge, but also being able to be there for them, provide resources, provide that support. And our two guests today are going to share some wonderful examples of that. So with us today, we have Lieutenant Jakisha Jones from the Arlington Police Department, and we also have Sergeant Trever Alsup from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and they're going to be introducing themselves here in just a second. So Lieutenant Jones, she likes to be called JJ. We are going to start with you. Why don't you go ahead and share with us who you are and a little bit about your supervisory experience.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm so glad you joined in. My name is Jakisha Jones, better known as JJ, also was known as the catering cop. I had an amazing 18-year experience with Arlington Police Department. Everything from foot patrol to other specialized units. I promoted to sergeant fairly early on in my career, served as a patrol sergeant as well as sergeant over the Entertainment District Tourism Unit, which was a fairly new unit that was formed due to us getting the AT&T Stadium and some of the other amazing tourism features that the city of Arlington, Texas has. After that, I promoted to the rank of lieutenant and served as a patrol operations commander, and also dually served as commander of our team that basically responded to, peaceful protests, riots, demonstrations, and then promoted to, actually was appointed to internal affairs for a couple of years, and then served back in patrol, which is my home, my love. It's been an amazing experience with supervision. I've seen everything, probably just like many of you, a lot of the great, a lot of the not so great, everything from fellow officers dying in the line of duty to responding to critical calls and seeing people take their last breath. And as you could imagine, after 18 years, it's had its toll. But I'm grateful for the coping skills and support systems that I've had in place. So definitely look forward to having this discussion with you. And thank you for joining in. Thank you, Trever.
Thank you so much, Jakisha. And again, we look forward to this conversation in the next few minutes. And next, we want to go ahead and introduce Sergeant Alsup. Even though he is a newer supervisor in his role, he's going to go ahead and introduce himself and tell you a little bit about his experience. Trever?
Morning, everyone. I'm Trever Alsup. I'm a sergeant with Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And I was a little bit of a late bloomer. I didn't promote until my 24th year. I was pretty comfortable in my assignments. I was a violent crimes detective. So shootings, stabbings, death, investigations, it's kind of where I lived. And later on in my career, I went to our force investigation team, where we conduct the criminal investigation into our officer-involved shootings. Throughout my career, I unfortunately have lost quite a few friends in the line of duty to car accidents, to suicides, and being killed by assailants. So again, I was a little bit late promoting in my career, but I'm enjoying myself. I'm currently the sergeant over a 6-man team for a flexible deployments team at one of our 10 area commands. And so far, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm extremely grateful to be here. Thank you, Armando, and thank you, Jakisha.
Thank you both for joining me today. And I think this is, so important to have this conversation. These are the kinds of conversations that we need to have. So I kind of want to start this session with both of you and speaking to you over the last few weeks. Each of you have this story that really resonates and why you both are so passionate about this topic. Each of you in particular, ironically enough, had a supervisor that did something to really change the trajectory of how you feel about this topic. So JJ, I kind of want to start with you. Would you mind just sharing some of the tidbits of your story, the exchange, what happened, and again, leading into why you're so passionate about this topic we are talking about today?
Absolutely. Definitely passionate about this topic with mental health, mental wellness, and just the influence that people have had on me in my career. Although I've had several supervisors and professional staff that have had an amazing impact on me. One sergeant in particular who actually even my primary sergeant definitely changed the trajectory on how I viewed law enforcement, how I continue to view it, and most importantly, how I treat people and take care of those assigned to me and beyond. This particular sergeant is retired from the Arlington Police Department now, but just amazing guy, always had an amazing temperament, always was happy to be at work. And if he wasn't, you couldn't tell. In particular, I think he noticed that I started to overextend myself, as any new officer would be. You're excited to be at work. You're signing up for everything, you're working overtime. And he just so happened to pull me aside one day. We ate standing outside of our car one day after a call for service we were on. I was working midnights at the time, but he was a day shift sergeant, but he kind of caught me in between before I got off and just kind of had a conversation with me about priorities. He talked to me about how much time was I spending with my family, how much time was I volunteering, although it's appreciated for officers to stay over when there's a need for overtime. He wanted to make sure that I was doing a check on myself and making sure that I wasn't overextending. What I appreciated is that he didn't, like belittle me or try to make it like I was doing things wrong. He just showed me options. He was with the department, I think 30 years, 31 years. So he's somebody that you would listen to. And he just asked me some simple questions. When was the last time I took the time to enjoy what I was working so hard for? And when he posed that question to me, it kind of made me pause because I was thinking, oh, I work very hard and I buy them this and I do this and I do that. But he said, where's your presence? Do they see you? He said, presence is more important than presence. So although you're doing these nice things and you're buying these things, when's the last time you sat down and cooked all these different meals that you're always telling me about? Again, I was known as the catering cop. When's the last time you saw this person or did that? So it caused me to reflect on how much time I was spending at work. And supervisors that are on are probably cringing like, no, don't tell people not to sign up and work. We're all looking for people to work right now. But it's so important to reset and refresh and to remember your why, not just why you wanted to become an officer, but why you wanted to support your family, why you wanted your family to be, proud of the decision you made to join the profession. I noticed that as I started doing that self-check, self-evaluation, and not necessarily balance, but making time to make things priority to me more than they were, I actually started feeling better. I started feeling like I was able to do what we talk about sometimes, which is separate from the job, meaning when you're off work, you're not talking all about the job. When you're at work, about the job, your spouse only hears about the job, your friends only hear about the job. And I think I learned so much from that moment and those times we spent that I started instilling that in the officers that worked for me when I became a supervisor. And so I'd had the opportunity to do that as a sergeant and a lieutenant.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. I was here taking notes and just from our conversations in the past few weeks, and I'm going to ask this to those that are watching on the live feed here, is you were impacted by a supervisor who wasn't even really directly in your span of control. You see, and that's, I think, such an important message that we get from that introduction, right? You could be, if you're a supervisor watching this, either live or on the replay, you could be that supervisor on an opposite shift that makes a huge difference in that officer's life with the way that you interact, with asking those questions, seeing how they're doing. And I think that's what we want to focus on so much today, is that interaction piece doesn't necessarily just have to come from your direct supervisor. It can come from anyone in the organization that's bold enough to just step out and say, are you okay? Right? Let me share with you some tips because they've been around a little bit longer. So I wanted to thank you for so much for sharing that story. And I want to ask, for those that are watching, if you've been impacted by a supervisor within your agency, go ahead and put the number 1 inside of our live chat feature. All you got to do is type in 1 and hit send, just to kind of get a feedback of those that are watching live that have been impacted, whether it was a direct supervisor or a non-direct supervisor. We just want to get some feedback in the chat if you've been impacted, either something with mental health or anything out of the ordinary that a supervisor has stepped up and definitely played a key part in your life. Trever, and going to you now, you have a similar story. You talked about that supervisor that made a difference. Will you share with us your story and how that supervisor has impacted where you are today?
Absolutely. So for me, I've had great supervisors throughout a 25-year career. And all of them have had an impact, and all of them have been there. And for quite a while, I've had quite a few that pushed me to promote. But there was one in particular, and it was Lieutenant Eric Lloyd. He came to our section when I was in the force investigation team, and he made it a point to engage with a purpose. He wanted to know everything about you, your family, your kids, important days, anniversaries, birthdays. He was just engaged with all of his people. He knew everything about them, and you were just drawn to him. He was a natural leader. Unfortunately, in April of 2020, I lost my dad to suicide. And when I came back to work, after a couple weeks off, he pulled me into his office and he made me make 2 promises to him. One of them was that I go see a therapist. He knew everything about my career. He knew everything that had impacted me, all the investigations that I have done, all the trauma that I'd been through. And he made me make that promise to him that I would go see a therapist. And the second one is he made me promise that I would promote. And I tried to blow that one off. And fortunately for me, he was very persistent. He had a few choice words for me, and I left his office and I made him that promise. 3 months later, he contracted COVID. He went into the hospital and he ended up dying from COVID. It was 6 months before his 30th anniversary and the day that he was going to retire. This is a man that had beat cancer, had been through a lot in his career, and it really kind of reinforced those promises that I had made to him. So I did promote, and as a result of that, I tried to take the things that he taught me and push those forward. Number 1 is to engage with a purpose, be involved in your officers' lives, know about their lives, know what their stressors are, to be able to see when they're having a problem without them even recognizing it, because that's really what he did for me. He made me see that I was having problems dealing with things before I even really knew or was cognizant of the fact that I was having issues. So it's very important, just that engagement. Like I said, he was the greatest leader that I've ever known. And I remember one of the conversations I had with him, I said, Eric, I don't want to promote. I don't know anything about leading people. He, in his subtle way, he told me, he said, Trever, he said, leadership is simple. He said, accomplish your mission and take care of your people. And it doesn't have to be in that order. So very impactful on my career.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I personally just want to tell you thank you, because I know it's difficult. Here we are in a public forum, but the fact that you're sharing your story, the fact that you're so open about your story, it's going to impact people watching this video, whether it's today or whether it's down the road, because I'm sure that we have other Trevors out there that are just waiting to, share their story, right? Reach out for help. And the fact that you decided to follow the advice, the fact that you decided to, hey, I'm going to take that supervisory role now later in my career, right? Where sometimes, we get a little complacent and we say, well, we don't want to deal with other people's mess. You took it as a challenge. You took it as, well, how can I help other people's mess? How can I be a part of that if they're going through a situation? How can I be that cure? How can I be that person that reaches out? So I just want to say, thank you for that. And, both of you, whether you realize it or not in your introductions and just now, you both mentioned the word family. How important it was for both of you in our discussions to really look at your officers beyond the badge. And JJ, I'm going to be going, back to you here in just a second, because you had mentioned the fact that not only did your impact story, that supervisor, look at you beyond the badge, but what you are doing now in your current role to make sure that you understand who that officer is beyond the officer that walks in with a uniform and a badge. You really want to get to know that officer, as Trever mentioned, because those things are important in this process. So tell me a little bit about why that family structure for you is so important, and maybe some things that you're actually doing as a supervisor that people that are listening and watching can say, maybe I need to start doing something like that.
Absolutely. One of the things, again, that it's actually Sergeant Stapleton. One of the things that he did that I mimicked verbatim was to have an understanding of me, as you said, beyond the badge. He knew my nickname. He knew my mom's name. I'm not married. I don't have kids yet. So I always joke and say it's me and my plant PJ, and that's work, watering my plant and keeping it together for as long as I have. I was a plant that was given to me when my dad passed away, Trever. So I intentionally, and I confidently can say this with majority of the people, not just directly assigned to me, but even in the agency within working with Arlington for as long as I had, to say their name, to know something about them and know something about their family. I make it intentional to walk down the hall, or if I've seen somebody in the office or see them out, hey, such and such, how are you? Hey, how's, little Johnny doing? Or how's that, how did you do on that test? I try to be intentional about that because everyone understands that we have a job to do. But I think the motivation of being at work is to know that you matter beyond tasks. You matter beyond a call for service or a report or a stat, that you, the person, are seen and are heard. And I think when we don't always really want to achieve missions as officers because it's tiresome or it's long, you know that there are people there that actually care about you and your well-being, and those are typically the people that you want to push through positively and follow, even when you may not necessarily really want to. Another thing that I thought was important when I was over the internal affairs unit, and even oftentimes when I was over patrol, we would, do briefings or debriefings like normal, but we would always take the time. Hey, do you have anything? Do you have anything? We do stuff like, okay, who has a briefing appropriate joke? Or we would ask the question, any advice? We'd ask the youngest officer who would be put on the spot and have the deer in headlights. Like, you want me to tell everybody else how we should be safe today or something? But it's making everybody feel included and feel a part. I'll never forget when I was in the internal affairs unit, we would have our weekly meetings, but then oftentimes we would take a moment and just break and just kind of discuss some of the things of the times. Everybody's impacted it with different ways with what's going on with the economy, their families, different people that we'd receive calls and complaints from. And it's just to make sure that we're checking in. I think the art or the concept of checking in now is so lost with a lot of the technology that we have. We may text each other, which there's nothing wrong with that, but that face interaction could make the difference between somebody, literally deciding that, hey, you know what, I can make it another day. Another thing that was important to my group that I was assigned to at the time, and even when I was over the midnight patrol, was their health and wellness. So the Arlington Police Department started a program called BlueFit, and BlueFit was really unique because it gave the incentive of being able to work out while on duty, which for the Arlington Police Department was huge because that wasn't something that we had before. You would get to meet with the trainer of the program, who also doubled as a nutritionist. So you would be able to get comp time to be able to go, you'd earn to go work out, and you could flex it out at different times. And it became so popular. It could only take so many people at a time that it became this coveted position to be able to do. And typically it was just that one time touch. So if we had people that wanted to go, I'd be willing to safely look at staffing and if needed to go below minimum to make sure people could be connected to something that made them feel whole and made them healthier. So I think a unique part about that also was that once you finish the program, it typically initially was only designed for those in, but the people that finished were like, well, what now? We want to do more. So you would see the different communities of officers continuing on with that health and wellness concept. We also started implementing the blue spaces in the different stations where you could go after a call and just unplug and sit in this room and check out. No calls for service for some time to just be able to decompress. I thought that was important. So our team would do that. Some of the funnest times was simply just having the open door policy. As an officer, it's hard, period, to have that downtime. You're doing reports, you're doing, responding to calls, you're trying to stay available, you're told to do self-initiated activity, and all those things are great. But, it may have been corny, but that's so my personality. I'd have an office space where you could come in. Hey, what snacks do you need? What do you need? Water? Do you need some type of beverage? Had a lot of keto people at one point. So I had to be intentional about finding snacks for keto and really just having an open door policy. Yeah. And something else I learned from that sergeant was to embrace the moment, which meant stop what I was doing and talk to that person in that moment, which can be hard when you have body-worn camera footage to review, audits for that. You're doing use of force reports. You're doing, evaluations. You're reading reports, all these different things. But to stop, literally turn around and give that person that time so that whatever it was that they wanted to talk about, they felt that it was safe to do. I think, especially as supervisors, I don't think the intention is to be rude. We're thinking, oh, I can multitask. I can type on this thing and still listen to you. But there's such an art and such a gift in your undivided attention. And so I learned that, and I didn't always get it perfectly, but I could tell the difference when people felt comfortable enough to come back to say, hey, I don't have a car right now. This happened. So, okay, well, let me pick you up. We don't have to let anybody know. Or, hey, use my catering car. Because, again, I was known as the catering cop. And just don't tear it up and just bring it back to me when you get your situation together. Or, hey, my family's falling apart. What do I need to do? Let's immediately get you connected to some resources. Or, hey, I'm having eustress, which is great because I'm about to have a baby, but I don't know what to do. I've never had a baby. So we take time and get in briefing and, hey, everybody that has a kid, raise your hand or multiple. What's some advice you would give to a first-time dad or a first-time mom? And so to change the dynamic of how we normally just routinely meet and really kept it as a family environment. And I wasn't the only person that did that, but I tried to do my unique way. I think the only other thing I'll add in this moment was something that I kind of felt led to do. I'm also a pastor at my church, not the pastor, but a pastor and associate. And I wrote thank you cards to everybody. Everybody that was assigned to me and everybody that wasn't, which I was like, I hope this doesn't step on toes with my peers. But we all know that it literally takes a lot for some days, most days for others, to come to work in the climate that we've been in with the different things that are happening, legislation changing in all of our different states. And just letting somebody know, I just appreciate you showing up. That alone took a big step. Everything else you do after that, although it's expected and required, is still a bonus. You made it here. Now let's go from there.
Right. And I think you shared some great initiatives, and we're going to be coming back to some of the specific strategies here on some follow-up questions that we have. And I'm going to be getting to the comments here in just a minute. But again, having that positive impact, right, on the climate. I want to thank Matthew, who talked about in the comments about being emotionally investing in your employees, provides them with the latitude to invest in the interactions with the citizens and each other. And I think that's so important, right? We kind of just like a top Fortune 500 company. We want to make sure that we're investing in our employees, right? The small things that we do. The two notes that I took down from what you just said, and you'll hear this consistently if you haven't had a chance and opportunity to take our Valor Initiative, courses, from our leadership courses to our Safer Together, that we're building community, to our SAFLEO program that is 100% invested into mental health, whether you're an officer or a supervisor. We're going to encourage you at the end to take a look at those courses. Is you talked about being intentional. That is so important in our roles as supervisor, right? You'll hear this throughout our initiatives in every course that we offer about being intentional. Second thing I noted was you talked about this building community, right? That's what we look to do in the Safer Together program. That's what we're looking to do in the other initiative programs, is how do we build that community, especially in this piece of mental health. You had a unique situation because, when somebody goes to internal affairs, sometimes they're treated a little bit differently, right? Or looked at differently. So the fact that you were able to remain human, make that connection, build that community, I think that might be able to resonate with folks that are listening and watching, even if they're in a, unique situation like internal affairs or another type of unit, that you have to be human first. And all I heard from your story was just be kind, right? Reach out, see how people are doing. And Trever, going to you, I know for you, that family, not only the challenge that you were given, right, but what you are doing now over at Las Vegas is really resonating with a lot of what JJ just talked about. So tell me about, how family impacts you and what you try to do as a supervisor to make sure that these officers beyond the badge.
So one thing I want to hit on, JJ, and you covered it perfectly, like these things are the greatest and worst things in the world, right? Mm-hmm. Because as a supervisor, somebody sits down to talk to you and you're doing this, even though you're paying attention, all they see is you on your phone. You're not engaging with them. So one of the first things I do, and we've all had, I don't want to say bad supervisors, but just supervisors that weren't up to par. I had one early in my career, and the first thing he said to my squad was, "You guys won't do anything to cost me my stripes." Well, that's not really the best way to start out that engagement with the team. So one of the things I really try to do is when I take over a squad, I get somebody new. I don't give expectations right away. I want to see how they function as a team. I want to take a couple weeks. I want to see how they operate. But the first thing I do within the first day or two is I pull them all into the office individually. I sit down with them. I want to know their birthday. I want to know their wife's name, girlfriend's name, boyfriend's name, husband's name, kids, their birthdays or anniversary days. These are all days that are important to them. I know this isn't a unique to Las Vegas thing, but I like to joke around and say that I'm one of the 5 people that were actually born and raised in Las Vegas. But for the most part, our whole community is transplants. Everybody came from somewhere else, and our department is made up. It's not any different. So one of the stresses we have that I think is exaggerated more than other departments is just that family aspect and childcare. Childcare becomes a huge issue for us because we don't have people that have family here that they can rely on.
Good point.
And just that one thing, if you're, I've had supervisors before where somebody walks in the briefing room and they're 3 minutes late, and it's a joke, but at the same time, it's not really a joke, and you're calling them out for being a few minutes late. Well, what if it was because their child was sick and you just don't understand exactly what was happening and the fact that they couldn't make it quite on time? Right. So it's really just, it's engaging. I say this all the time. It's engaging with purpose. It's knowing your people, knowing what is happening in their family. I've had officers in the past that have had special needs children. That creates a whole new drama for that person. And by taking that 15, 20 minutes to really understand their life and what's going on, not only are you getting to know them, but you're developing their baseline, right? You're seeing exactly where they're at and what their normal is. So that if something happens and they come in, there's just something that's just not quite right. You identify it, you know they're below that baseline. And then you start asking those questions and you start, and I try not, it's a fine line sometimes, right? Between digging into somebody's personal life, but yet trying to make them understand that you're actually trying to help them. So I'm going to give you a recent example. A few months ago, we had an officer that took his own life in one of our area commands. It wasn't our area command, but during briefing, I noticed that 2 of my officers, you could just, their baseline was off. There wasn't something right. So after briefing, I called each one of them into the office individually. And what I found out was one of them went through the academy with this person. They were in the same platoon. They were in the same squad. They knew each other very well. And the second one had just transferred to our area command from the area command where that officer was and was a squad mate with them. Well, neither one of them really showed it. You had to kind of be paying attention and know what their normal is in order to see that there was just something not right. So when I pulled them in, you start talking to them and talking to them as a person. And these are the macho officers, right? Both of them were big guys, stocky, built, work out all the time, don't show emotion. And just as a course of talking to them, both of them broke down in my office. Wow. Into tears. That's not a person you want to put on the street. They're not in the right mind frame to go out and handle other things that are happening without taking care of themselves first. So, even though it put me under minimum staffing, I sent both of them home. And I told them, if at any point tonight you're going through something and you don't know how to handle it, I better be your first phone call so that we can get those resources and we can get you lined up and get this taken care of. So, like JJ said, it's just being present. We look in Webster's dictionary, and family is defined by related by blood, marriage, or any other affinity. Well, we like to say that we're a family in law enforcement.
Yeah.
But sometimes we don't really take care of our family the way that we would take care of our family. So really, that's what it is. Just taking care of your people, getting to know them, knowing their stressors, and knowing when something is in play. And JJ, I will give you my address, and you can send me keto snacks.
I got you covered.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, Trevor, thanks for sharing. Again, I think it just goes back to what both of you are hitting the key points on, being there, being intentional, getting to know who really these people are, not just in good times, right? Understanding that regardless of the makeup of the officer, right, as you kind of identified, Trevor, right, we all are human. Officers behind the badge are human. They're going to struggle. They're going to have bad days, weeks, which can carry into months. And it's really the supervisor's role and responsibility, forget as a supervisor, as a human being, and then as a supervisor, to make sure that we're reaching out and we're asking some of these questions, that we're being intentional. Because I think when we can make that human connection, as a supervisor, the officer will really no longer see you as a supervisor, but he or she has the opportunity to see you as a human being. And I think both of you have some great stories. And I'm going to ask you for some actionable items as we begin to kind of wind down and close over the next 8 to 10 minutes that, supervisors can do today. But I just want to hit on that point again, right? The fact that you're both of you have chosen a route because of maybe the impact that you had. And now for everyone moving forward, you're being intentional in how you're going about to know the people that are in your span of control or outside of your span of control, because you're being intentional, right? And again, this is a common theme that you're going to hear within all of our initiative courses about being that intentional, building community. And I think both of you are two good examples about the roles that supervisors play in building this community. And Trevor, for you, going later in your career as a supervisor, the leadership books will tell us that you have to start kind of fresh. It's building that credibility piece again, or building that trust piece, because now you've joined the supervisory ranks, right? So that also takes a little bit of hard work to do. So, for you, it was maybe starting all over and building that trust piece with so many folks as well. So we do have a comment from Matthew. Thank you so much. He wanted to ask both of you. He wonders how you feel about the way that supervisor support, kind of what you both are doing, right, will have an impact with employee retention, right? So maybe if you want to just a couple of minutes each at max, is what have you seen, or how do you feel about that topic, that if we connect with officers early, as both of you have mentioned, right, day one, they come in from the academy or from another agency, that within a very short amount of time, we want to know who they are. We want to know who their family's about. We want to know if they have childcare issues. So when they are late to roll call, Trevor, hey, I understand, right? You're not from Vegas. You just moved here for this career opportunity. How can I help support you? What's your feelings on that with regards to retention? JJ?
I think two quick things for me. One, people don't quit positions. They don't quit places. They quit people.
Yeah.
And so, especially leaders. And I think it's important, like to what Trevor was saying also, is that, and thank you for that question, Matthew, that we do pay attention to our people. It definitely has an effect on retention and recruiting, because all it takes is that one officer young officer, all agencies are looking for qualified and, people that desire to be in law enforcement. So from a perspective of someone that's been there, you don't want the groupthink because they're disgruntled because of the leader and maybe never had a chance to kind of get restored in the sense of having a conversation, or, maybe that leader, talk negatively about them and it impacted their character or their career beyond maybe what it needed to. So I think that's important. People don't quit organizations necessarily. They quit the people that are trusted to lead them. I think also it affects recruiting, to his question, because all it takes is one conversation for a newer officer to hear from a veteran officer, and now they're looking to go somewhere else. So it definitely affects recruiting and retention. I would also speak to when you asked the question about what does that look like, I think it's important to remember how do you restore people when they have messed up. And I think supervisors have a direct impact on that as it pertains to retention also, because there are many situations in what we do where people can be restored, but what does that look like? And so that looks like relationship, that looks like effective communication, that looks like creating an environment where when someone's, if they've received discipline or whatever it is, how do you work them back into the agency to be positive and productive and keep them there? Because if you're going to keep them there, allow them to have a space where they can rebuild trust, rebuild connections, rebuild to possibly move forward and maybe be a leader again in the agency. So I think those are two things that are pretty big for me outside of what we've already said in detail about relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, the officers at every agency, they are the agency's biggest marketers. They're either going to go out and share good stories or share bad stories about their leadership. Right? Officers are not afraid to speak their mind. So that impact can definitely have a positive impact, because we know that recruiting and retention are some of the major issues happening right now in our noble profession. Trever, same thing for you. What do you think that impact can have on, let's say, the retention at your PD?
Going along the same lines as JJ, one of the things I kind of missed out on, but in that initial conversation with my officers, I want to know where they've been and where they want to go.
Yep.
And I'm very lucky. I have tenure on this department, and I know people everywhere. So if an officer tells me that he really wants to go to SWAT, okay, well, here's the people you need to contact. You need to get up there. You need to train with them. If you want to go to homicide, here's the career path you need to take. Here's the people you need to talk to, and I will send them a text and get you in contact with them. So it's just investing in people. That's the main thing. If you invest in people and you treat them right, they're going to want to stay. And you can look at it, you walk into any briefing room, roll call, whatever you want to call it. And if you have a supervisor who works day shift with weekends off, but they're having a hard time filling their squad, and then you have a supervisor who works has Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off, and they work graveyard, but their squad is full, you know the supervisor that's doing what they're supposed to do. You know the supervisor that's investing in their people and that's treating people the right way. So again, just like JJ said, it comes back to investing in your people, knowing them, knowing their goals, their family. It makes them feel part of that family and know that if they have a problem, that there's going to be help for them to get through those areas.
Right. And that really is our role in a leadership position, even a non-leadership position, but especially those leaders that are here, because really anyone can step up to be a leader. And so you don't necessarily need that title to be able to reach out and help someone. I hope that message resonates maybe with somebody watching who says, well, I'm not a leader. No, yes, you are. Right. Yes, you are. The moment you leave that police academy, we are asking you to lead yourself, right, and to lead your agency as well, regardless of rank or structure. And so I have kind of a follow-up question, and then we're going to each of you maybe give you a couple of minutes each max to answer. And I think both of you talked about this with me several weeks back, the importance of critical incidents and how a critical incident can happen either at your agency, a neighboring agency, or even something we watch on the media or social media, and it can have a direct impact on the officers that we supervise. So if each of you can share maybe a couple of actionable items, things that you would recommend supervisors to do when there is a critical incident, either at your agency or agency next door. And Trever, I'm going to actually start with you. Give me a couple of things that you think are so important for a supervisor to do today when there is a critical incident with regards to making that connection, to making sure that our officers are okay?
Let's be honest, every community is, you never know when a critical incident or a major incident is going to happen in your jurisdiction, right? We had ours October 1st, 2017, that impacted our whole department. You look at what happened in Nashville yesterday. It's not a question of if it's going to happen anymore. It's a question of when. And as supervisors, as leaders, and just as officers, we need to be prepared for that. And it's about building those relationships prior. Again, knowing your officers, where they are, so that when something does happen, you're able to tell, you're able to see that they're struggling and get them the help they need. And I think a lot of it, especially for people that have been on the department, we smash the stigma, right? That's the thing that we use all the time. And the stigma around mental health. And when I hired on, you didn't talk about feelings. You just pushed everything down and you kept going.
Right.
But now we've started to evolve and we're getting a little bit better. But people with tenure on departments can't be afraid to come out and say, hey, I've struggled with this. I've been through these incidents. Here's how it affected me. And you have to, not just after the call, reach out to those people, but you have to follow up with them, because these traumas build over time. And you could be like me, where I hit the 17, 18-year mark, where everything kind of started to unravel for me. I'm very open with my officers. I tell my officers that every 2 weeks I go to counseling. That's the appointment that I keep. Every 2 weeks I'm sitting on a counselor's couch and I'm usually crying. But you have to be open. You have to be vulnerable. People have to see that human side of you to understand that the things they're going through aren't wrong. It doesn't mean they're broken. And if you will allow me just this one thing real quick.
Yep.
You ask an officer how they are after a critical incident, and the thing they're going to say is, I'm all right, or I'm okay. Right? That's what
the standard answer. I'm fine, right?
Right. I'm okay. Well, I have a thing, and I actually stole this from somebody in Albany, New York, so I won't give the credit. But when somebody tells me they're okay, what they're telling me is they're broken. Something's not right. And I don't accept okay. We're all police officers. You're going to have to articulate okay a little bit better than that. I want to know exactly what you're feeling. And you're going to have to open up, and you're going to have to tell me what okay means for me to believe that you're actually processing things the right way. But it's just being sometimes emotionally vulnerable and telling people, in my case, what I've been through, where I've struggled, and the fact that I do go to counseling now, and I wish I would have started it 15 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And again, just thank you so much for being so open, because I know someone's going to watch this today, tomorrow, next week, next month, and say, that's me. Like, if Trever could do it, I could do it. So I think you're bringing hope to that officer that's going to watch or listen and say, I need to take that first step forward if I want to help myself. And JJ, in the last minute, follow up with anything that Trever said, or the important role of following up after a critical incident in about a minute.
Like I said, I'm an associate pastor at my church. I kind of use the discipleship model. It's one thing for me to tell you how you can get over it. It's another thing for me to walk you through it. So I try to do exactly what Trever said. I look at their baseline. I look at their foundation. If they're off, I'm on them with them until I can see that they're back to what their normalcy or maybe their new norm is. I also, Trever, attend counseling, whether it was from my dad's passing or the line of duty deaths we had. I think we had like 6 in a year and a half at one point. The critical incidents we've had with the police department, with the Arlington Police Department. But I always make sure that personal and professional development is important. That's phone calls. That's, offering to go-to stuff with them. And as supervisors, even if that's not your personality, you have to make people your business, your priority. It's hard everybody's not an extroverted extrovert. I definitely am. But we should have the ability to stretch to make sure that people are covered and that they feel safe. We protect people and make them safe, but we need a safe space as well.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And this goes for, that supervisor that's watching that says, they're waiting for that next rank up to reach out to them. And so, we can impact so many people. And I think both of you did an amazing job conveying not only your personal stories, the human side of you, but some actionable items, things that you're doing, things that people that are watching and listening can say, I can go back and maybe I'm not a great communicator, but maybe I can start today by reaching out to that one officer that just hasn't been acting what I think to be normal, right? And so they're not okay, they're not fine, as Trever pointed out, for the stigma. So I want to thank you both so much for sharing your story. I think you brought out the importance of the supervisor's role when it comes to mental health. I think not only do we have to be human, but we also need to be there for support, also to be there to share resources, to be that counselor, to be that speaker at the time, to be that father, that mother at the time, just somebody to reach out and maybe just give them a hug and say, we're going to get through this together. So thank you so much for doing that. I also want to thank Chief Perry for being behind the scenes and working on our resources in our chat. Thank you so much, Chief, for doing that. And we don't want to disconnect from you. So I'm going to encourage you to check out our social media sites when it comes to our Safe Leo programs. I can just tell you from personal experience that when you share something, I know for me in my 26-year career, I saw plenty of, when social media was available. It could have been a post, it could have been a video, something that you shared. I may have never known the impact, but I can tell you I have personal stories where an officer from another agency came to me and says, hey, I saw that video that you shared on XYZ social media platform, and I loved it. I learned from it. So, we're going to encourage you to also check out our website, our safeleo.org. Look at the resources, sign up for courses, whether you're an officer or a supervisor. Let's stay connected. We want to make sure that we are a resource to you when it comes to this space of mental health. And again, if you got some value on today's video, it doesn't cost anything to hit the like. There's no disagreement that, the YouTube feeds will love to see this video liked and commented on. That'll give the opportunity for someone who may not even know this video happened today, catch this video, who's struggling, and maybe be the wake-up call. And you would have had a huge impact on helping them and their lives. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you on our next webcast. We're going to be diving into more topics on officer resources and officer wellness. Thank you so much for watching.